Russia attacked Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, early this morning, just a day before NATO leaders gather in Turkey for an annual summit. Ukrainian authorities say at least 22 people were killed. Russian strikes on Thursday, also in Kyiv, killed 31 people. President Trump, who is heading to the NATO summit later tonight, said this on the state of the war.
President Putin wants it to end. I will tell you that very strongly. What a good call. And President Zelensky actually wants it to end now. And we're going to be going to NATO, and we're going to be talking about it. And I think we're going to get it. I think we're going to get it ended.
CBS News national security contributor Samantha Vinograd joins me now. Sam, always great to have you here. We've heard that from the president before, but in the last couple of months, this war did change. Ukraine showed what it can inflict in terms of damage, economic and otherwise, in the interior of Russia and in Crimea. Russia's now proven, yes, you can do things to us that we don't like and that are destabilizing, but we can hit your capital city with impunity because you don't have enough air defenses. Where do you think things stand?
Well, we're in the 5th year of this war, and both sides continue to change tactics. As you mentioned, Ukraine continues and has really accelerated attacks against infrastructure far deeper into Russia than before. There are a lot of conflicting accounts about how Russia's actually doing on the battlefield. Sure, they're hitting Kyiv, but they're suffering enormous casualties and really not gaining a lot more
almost
territory.
no ground.
Inches each day. And so the question becomes, do both sides want to end the war? Probably yes. So Trump is right on that, but under what terms? And so Putin would probably be thrilled to end the war if he could keep all the territory he has taken to date and probably more with some other strings attached. Whereas Ukrainian President Zelensky, along with, by the way, most NATO members, want Russia out of Ukraine and really want to hamstring Putin from just doing this all over again in another year or two.
And when the NATO meeting convenes, there will be this conversation about U.S. troop forces across Europe. And it's been made clear by this administration, it's pulled a few out, and there's a 6-month review where many more could be pulled out. That's not incidental to this broader possible negotiated end of the war.
It is no secret that President Trump, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, and other members of the administration really view NATO as more of an annoyance than as a force multiplier for U.S. sovereignty and national security. It sure has. It sure has. And particularly as we think about the biggest national security threats from nation states, the United States, Russia, and China, NATO is really critical to countering them. But we have the 6-month force posture review. We have the U.S. administration making statements about just pulling forces back more generally because we don't want to fight your war, Europe. Russia's not our problem, it's yours. So overall, going to the summit, I don't think the 31 other member states are feeling incredibly optimistic about this summit being used for what it's been used for previously. I was at the Chicago summit with President Obama. The NATO summits historically have been used to really publicly signal the strength of the alliance and, of course, certainly to make new commitments on defense spending and otherwise. But I do worry, Major, that this NATO summit could backfire. President Trump gets up there and is criticizing NATO again and showing fractures within the alliance. That's going to have a series of unintended consequences.
And in Moscow, Vladimir Putin would listen to all that and say, well, there's no reason for me to concede right now.
I think he's probably already thinking that.
Probably so.
But at the same time, we also have to remember that Ukraine and the war that Russia started with Ukraine has kind of become the forgotten war for the U.S. administration. Key negotiators haven't met in months. There have been no material, really substantive negotiations. And as you mentioned at the outset, Ukraine is running really low on these interceptors. These interceptors don't get manufactured overnight. They're expensive. And so Zelensky is meeting with Trump on the sidelines of the summit. Ukraine is not a member of NATO. They're what you call a partner.
Right.
They're one of 16 countries that are NATO partners. Zelensky is hoping that he can convince Trump to both publicly signal support for Ukrainian sovereignty and promise more interceptors.
Do something with rhetoric and do something with interceptors. Sam Vinograd, always great stuff.